Connect, and I am in the ad tech business. Shruti and I have started this about 7, 8 months ago with the hope to really help product managers or wannabe product managers excel at their job. We started off with people getting into product management, and now we want to focus on, okay, how do people excel at their initial stages or later stages of their product management career?
Awesome. Awesome. Well, my name is Neha. I head product at a small startup called Obsidian Security. Prior to that, I was at Lacework, and I've had other PM positions that I've held at Elastic before that and New Relic. So been in the PM space for a little bit now. And yeah, it's been a fun journey.
To begin with, let's start with, like, what was your motivation to enter into product management?
My motivation to, so I started off my journey as an engineer. I think, a few of us, at least in the tech sector, can relate to that. I started off as an engineer, and I think for the first 5, 6 years, it was primarily just working on engineering responsibilities. I think very early on, I realized that while engineering was interesting to me, there was something missing, like from my perspective on how, what I was building. There was always a curiosity from my end, essentially to figure out how the product I was building was essentially impacting the customer. Was a customer going to use it? So although I was not in DevOps, actually, at my role at Tipco Software, I sort of transitioned into a technical marketing role. So while I was developing the product, I was also working with the marketing team, essentially on how do we pitch this product? How is a customer going to use the product? So that sort of got me interested a lot more in the field. And then, so once I knew and got a taste for what life was outside of engineering, I think one of the biggest learnings for me was it transitioned me essentially from thinking about like, what am I building to like, why am I building? So I think once I got sort of a hang of like, why am I building this product? I think it was very quick. It was a quick realization that that is what I wanted to do and sort of continue to sort of invest in. So at that time, started looking around for jobs. And New Relic had posted a job on technical marketing engineer. I had zero experience in that field. I had no idea what they did, but I kept sort of, reaching out, cold calling the recruiter in this case, started doing that role. And very quickly in that role, given I was super technical and, most marketing folks don't tend to be, I started working very closely with the product management team. And one fine day, talking to the head of product at New Relic, and he was like, I don't know why you're in marketing. I think you should just be in product management. I think this is well suited for you. So yeah, I decided, I wanted to do product management at some point anyways. I just didn't know when the transition was going to happen. But it just so happened that, there was a PM that left the company at that time. The conversation between the head of PM and me happened, and I was like, sure, I'll throw my hat in the ring. So not that I just got the job immediately, I had to interview for it. I had to go through the whole exercise of, going through an interview panel, presenting my, whatever use case documents that they had. But I got the job and I have not looked back. I think it's probably one of the best decisions that I made. And yeah, since then I've been in the PM land and loving it.
No, that's awesome to know, Neha. I think a couple of things that resonate, like at least I can resonate with, and I'm very sure Nishant can as well, is like the persuasiveness, right? Like you were always looking for an opportunity. You were not like, okay, this is what an engineer is supposed to do. And you were trying to understand what you really wanted and move the needle in that direction. I think this is something that everyone, irrespective of what genre we are working on, we need to do. And the second thing is just like, your idea of talking to people and influencing them so that, someone somewhere is looking out for you as well, like getting that sponsorship methodology. We covered it in one of our last episodes, and it becomes so much important to like keep talking to people in your company and outside it to keep, help you grow in your career as well. So, yeah. So
absolutely. I think, and as you grow in your career, I think that doesn't change at all. Like, regardless of what role you are, I think, having that sponsorship, having someone that you can talk about stuff to. And again, it doesn't always have to be like, how do I get promoted or how do I move? But it's essentially fostering some of these relationships can help sort of provide that opportunity. For me, it wasn't when I joined the PMM or the TME team, actually, there's an interesting story there too. I joined as a TME, then a PMM left, and I was like, oh, I was my PM and manager at that time was like, can you be a PMM? And I'd never been a PMM. He's like, okay, the CMO wants us to create a marketing campaign. You have a week to do it. Can you do that? And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But given I had the set of relationships I did with, folks in marketing, I was able to pull together a plan. So just having, people that you can talk to, building those relationships essentially across the organization always helps. And I think that's something that I've always sort of leveraged and banked on as I've moved through, different organization and roles in my career.
Yeah, it feels like a little bit of serendipity in many of our cases, but it also requires us to be diligent and be present. Like to make that happen, it's 1 out of 10 chances, right? But for those 10 chances to occur, you're actively networking, actively being nice to people, and presenting yourself as an option at every point, right? And taking when you're
Absolutely.
given it a chance. Like a lot of people might just say, "Oh my God, product marketing, why would I do that? I'm technical. Maybe product management makes sense." But
Yeah.
you're like, okay, why not? And then that led to product management, right? That's amazing.
Exactly.
That reminds me, Nishant also came from PMM world to PM
Ah,
world.
nice.
So actually,
Yeah.
engineer then PMM to PM, right? Like pretty much
Yeah.
a very similar journey that you have had, Neha. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Awesome.
used to have a partner in crime very similar to you. He would be the technical guy, I would be the semi-technical guy, and we would take the product live, and it was really fun. And I can see a lot of synergies between TME and product management. My friend, he also came into product management, but he's a much more platform slash technical product manager at this stage of his career.
Yeah. And I think I would like, again, probably not relevant to this conversation, but like folks that are in engineering that want to move to product management, I feel like the TME or a PMM role, TMA more so than PMM, is a great transitionary role because it is the polar opposite of what an engineer should be. Because as an engineer, you're all about, okay, I have my scopes defined. Here's what I'm going to execute on. You go execute. But the TME problem is completely different, right? You have a product. It's all about how are you going to sell the product? Like what is going to resonate with the customer? So it completely changes your mindset on how you think about product. And I think that preps you for product management also really well because you've now seen both sides of the house where it's like how the product gets built, but why are you really building the product? And that really, helps from a PM perspective. Like not everybody has the same transition. I think like we've been lucky enough to have that. So I value that experience quite a lot, like at least personally from what I've been through.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. So, tell us a little bit about your journey from, being an ICPM. What helped you grow and what are things that you notice as, like a leadership being different from compared to being an ICPM?
What helped me grow is I think the same set of principles that helped me grow as like an individual PM is investing in those relationships. Within Elastic, learned a lot, essentially didn't have direct reports there, but had lot dotted lines to, a few other folks that worked in the organization. And then someone from a past life came knocking, is like, hey, we're looking for someone to lead a product team here, and I think you'd be great. And I was like, I don't know anything about security. They were like, you don't know anything about DevOps and like, devs, when you join Neura, like that doesn't mean anything. And I was like, that is right. Again, one of those relationships that I built in my past life.
I may interject, like, were you leading a team at New Relic by that point, or like your previous company by that point? Or were
No,
you...
I was an IC. So I was an IC at New Relic and both Elastic. At New Relic, I had, again, I think I was in charge of, like, by the time I sort of left the company, I was in charge of like a huge portfolio, and there were other product managers managing other pieces of the platform or the product, I should say. I didn't have a direct report, but like, again, did collaborate with quite a few folks. Even at Elastic, it didn't, wasn't really a manager, if you will. But again, collaborated with quite a few other folks and essentially drove initiatives as an ICPM. It's just been an evolution of like, just getting in, identifying what work needs to get done, getting the work done, ensuring, you can bring stakeholders on, align them, and essentially execute. And that's what sort of, helped me transition from an ICPM. And I think fundamentally that's the difference between an ICPM and a PM leader is as an ICPM, you're probably focused on executing things that you've been asked to do or what you think is right for your part of the product. And as a PM leader, the biggest thing that you're doing is essentially ensuring that, one, strategically you're aligned with where the CEO or the company wants to go. But secondly, you're aligning the stakeholders and the various different people in the organization to ensure you are always marching in the direction that you want to, go to deliver on some of those business outcomes that you're trying to drive. So that's, I think, fundamentally what the difference is. The way you execute is very similar. Again, as a PM, you're not writing code. You really have to depend on, or you're not really selling the product yourself either. You are collaborating with folks across the organization. So building, fostering those relationships, and essentially, effectively doing stakeholder management can help you sort of grow.
Yeah. I mean, like, I do see the point that the core skills remain same. What about, like, do you feel like as you have become a PM leader versus, an ICPM, other than the scope change, right? Like, obviously, as a PM leader, you need to think about a portfolio, multiple portfolios, and ICPM probably initiatives or a feature level. How, like, what about managing people as well?
Managing people is hard. People are the hardest job of, and like for any people manager, people leader, like I was literally having this conversation at work yesterday, is like, people are hard, like managing people is hard. Managing product managers is even harder because with PMs, you have a set of people that are highly opinionated, know what they want to do. Most of them pretty strong-headed in terms of what they want to achieve. So it's definitely challenging, but I think the core principles of how you operate and work with the team is again very similar, is essentially how can you build a safe space for your team to understand that, my job as a PM leader is to ensure my team has, a broader understanding of where we are headed as an organization. But my job is essentially to ensure they are enabled so they can do their best jobs and deliver on the business outcomes that we did. So that's what is sort of my sort of North Star or anchor point. Every time I'm like thinking about what my PMs should be doing, that's sort of my frame of thought, is essentially helping them sort of doing their job. So like, it's all about sort of reaching out, creating a safe space where they can sort of innovate, think, experiment, and giving them the tool sets and ensuring that I can, essentially get the buy-in from leadership, other stakeholders across the company that enables them to do their best job, whether that's acquiring a new tool, experimenting with a new idea, whatever that is. So my job is essentially to go and ensure that I can enable them to do that in the environment that we have. So that is what I would say is like sort of the difference from a people management perspective. But again, sort of still leveraging the same core principles of, people are people, like, you manage them or you report into them. It's the same equation. You gotta create a space at least for people that report to you to essentially grow and, essentially do their best work.
Yeah.
And that's my job.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I can vouch for that.
Yeah.
Nishant, go ahead.
So I was going to ask something earlier on. So I'm surprised that someone trusted a PM, ICPM, with a new industry and a new job function, if you can talk about the people management aspect of it, right? A little bit different. So I've seen people grow from IC2 group in the same company or in the same industry, or I've seen people go from group to group in a different industry. I would love to, maybe it's difficult to go back in time, but at this point in time, Neha, so if you were at an IC and you want to give them a shot at a group, and not from the same industry, for example, what are you looking for? And why would you give that shot, especially when the pool is so vast?
I mean, I don't think the journey was like I joined Lacework and I was, had people reporting into me. I joined with the director title with the intention that I was going to have a team. And then over time, as I performed and as I delivered on things that were expected, as I formed those relationships, I was able to sort of, essentially have a team. And
Nice.
honestly, thinking about it, like, for me, my perspective, you're absolutely right. Hiring an ICPM from another sort of field and essentially having them on a team on day one is probably not the right approach for, multiple reasons. But for me, one of the big reasons is not, even if I've worked with them in the past, for me, I think the biggest thing was sort of maintaining the dynamics on the team. I
Yeah.
wouldn't want to do that. It's unfair to the folks on the team. So even if, there is someone, I would probably bring them, regardless of the title, sort of bring them as an ICPM, give them a chance to perform, give them a chance to prove that, yes, they can lead a part of the organization, and then the transition happens, because then that becomes easier for everyone on the team and essentially for the person coming in. Because otherwise, if I was asked to manage a team on day one at Lacework, I would have failed. That was not setting anyone for success, setting up anyone for success. So I wouldn't do that. Sometimes you do, when you're interviewing, you meet folks that you can see sort of the potential in, like, you can see them sort of growing to that that next level, that you can trust them to drive a team essentially, or run a team. But again, from my perspective, still bring them as an ICPM just to set them up for success, so they can learn the industry, they can find legs in the organization, build the relationships before any sort of dynamics of the team is disturbed. So sometimes you just have to think about, like, how do you want to play this out? Like I said, people are hard, so you got to sort of ensure that you can keep your team happy, and you can ensure, like, you're getting the right types of output from the folks, and essentially how do you sort of optimize for that. And bringing in someone new, you always have to be careful of how you manage that.
I actually want to double click on that, but I also want to go back and rewind your journey a little bit, because in my head I was like, oh my God, here is this story which is unique, where someone went to from an IC to a group all of a sudden, right? But maybe again, for everyone's benefit, to keep it realistic, leaders would want them to have like a much smoother growth, bring them in, nurture, and then give them a
Nurture.
that should be
Absolutely.
what we should also be aiming for people who are going from IC and looking for that leadership positions,
Yep.
especially
Yeah.
changing teams altogether.
Yeah, but I think as an ICPM coming in, I'd say, like, if you have those expectations, if that's what you want to grow, I would be transparent in interviews. You'd be surprised the number of, like, leaders that are open to having these conversations with even potential candidates. It's actually a good thing when a candidate sort of brings up, like, what they aspire to be. I always ask these questions in interviews, like, where do you see yourself in the next 2 to 6 years? Not everyone wants to people manage, and that's fine too, but I think it's important to understand, so you can set up whoever is coming in up for success too. Like, going back to my that you were asking the question, right? Double clicking on, like, what happened. Like,
Yeah, so no, I wanted to double click on what do you look for? So you were mentioning that when you're interviewing candidates, you look for potential in terms of could they become a people manager at some point, especially if they did not have past experiences. What else are you looking for in those candidates?
so again, you don't have to have direct experience of, like, having managed people, right? Like, I think this is where sometimes you have dotted line functions, like someone's probably not reporting to you directly, but someone's work that you've managed, because let's say it's a huge feature, you were the one who was driving it, it's like a set of capabilities, launching a new product, but it has, sub pieces of the product that were involved in launch. Like, you could have been managing that as a PM. And again, you don't have direct reports working for you, but like PM reports, but these PMs could have handled a piece of the functionality that you were, that they were shipping, that contributed to your sort of big launch that you were doing. That's relevant experience, because that demonstrates, you're capable of going beyond the scope of what just you are responsible for, and essentially delegating work out to other folks that you may be dependent on to essentially contribute to that common goal of, like, or common capabilities that you're shipping. So I think it's from an experience perspective, I would look at that, like, what experience do they have in working in on projects or leading projects that have multiple PMs on it, even if they've not directly managed people. That usually gives you a good indicator of how they were able to sort of drive strategy, influence others on capabilities that they were accountable for at the end of the day. So you don't have to have a direct, report, but some of these things can give you a good indicator of what that, potential and how that person will perform in their role as a manager.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that makes total sense. It's almost like you're looking for leading indicators from a product manager's perspective. You have the potential to grow in. That's brilliant. Thank you so much.
So, yeah, I mean, just talking about interviews as well, Neha, right? Like other than, obviously like finding indicators of what that person's career would look like if you have to hire them, people manager, IC and whatnot. What are other traits that you're looking for just in terms of hiring a PM? What are the things that you're looking for?
For a PM, I think one of the things that I probably look for the most is like passion, and it has to be passion on like things that you're doing, like, even from their past experience or a project that they worked on. I'm like, top thing I'm looking for. I think as a product manager, if you're not passionate about what you're building, the outcome can be suboptimal. Like you want to see that energy, that passion, you want to see, that attention to detail come through in that interviews too, because I think, and again, I might be biased here and I may be totally wrong, but like, passion to me essentially drives that, attention to detail, because you really care deeply about what you're doing. So for me, some of those things are really important when I'm looking at a PM, is the ability to sort of decipher how passionate they are about the work that they've led. It could be any project, doesn't have to be, in their existing position, but whatever they've done in their past life, essentially, and how they can sort of communicate that. Communication is another big one. I think as PMs, we are collaborating with folks across the organization. So someone that has, can demonstrate that they have clear communication capabilities is crucial. So I would say like those are the two top things that I look for. I think technology can be taught. People can learn different technology, not a problem at all, especially when it comes to tech PMs. But what, that passion, that drive to do stuff, and essentially the ability to communicate clearly are absolutely two, crucial things that you need for a product manager.
Yeah, I mean, like the whole notion about the drive, right? Like unless you don't have the passion, you can also not instill that passion in the team that you're working with, right? Like your engineers would be like, oh, this is a feature that I'm asked to work on and we'll just ship it. I've seen a lot of times when, we are passionate about something, it shows up with the engineering, mindset as well, that, this is why we are doing this and this is going to be presented, and, our customers are looking into this. Yeah, I mean, I truly agree.
Reverse question. So you were talking about what do you look for in good PMs, right? Were there situations, or do you have questions where you ask to weed out the bad ones, whether, okay, this is a culture misfit and I don't want them in my team, kind of a thing? Anything that's a turn off for you?
I mean, that's a pretty loaded question in terms of like, because and the answers could be multiple. If I had to answer the culture question, I mean, I'm well aware of like, I'm working at a startup. I know what the environment at a startup is, so for me, it's like, culturally fit or not kind of depends on essentially how they're talking about what they did and the atmosphere they've worked in, especially how they've worked across challenges. For me, it's really important to know, like, what projects didn't, what bets did you make as a product manager essentially that failed, and like what were your learnings from it? Because all of us have a story where, the project did not go that well. So just learning from, just seeing how, like, a candidate sort of responds to that and how they work through that scenario, is sometimes a great indicator of telling you like how, like, gives you an information on how resilient they are, how they're thinking about it, like learnings they take away from such failures. And I think all of those are important, essentially. Like, how do you deal with difficult situations, right? We're all, I think, challenged with 100 difficult situations on a very regular basis. So it's okay to fail. Like, I think it's okay to sort of make a bet and fail.
Yes.
But I think it's how you handle the situation, how you come out of it, that's crucial. And that story almost always tells you what you need to know, at least about like how this, how a product manager is sort of working in different situations, stressful or not, essentially, and how they navigate some tough waters.
Yeah.
Got it.
Nishant, just to give you some context, I was working when I was reporting to Neha, there was a project where there was a push to not release it. And, me and Neha kept, going back and forth. And Neha at the end was like, I would rather have you fail and learn than just keep sitting on it. And like, I still follow that notion. I'm like, if we don't get it out, we will never learn. And, we will probably fail, but the idea is to pivot. And that's what, helps make a better PM.
And I
Right.
think that's what I've been telling my team, even like, I continue telling the team now too. Like, I think as, as a product manager, sometimes you are stuck in that analysis paralysis phase, even with an idea. Like, is this a good idea? Is this a big enough idea? Is this, a terrible idea? And sometimes you're sort of, downplay yourself. Sometimes imposter syndrome takes over. Like, I just don't understand this. And then you sort of don't do it. And what I tell my team is like, we should ideate, we should prototype, we should fail fast, learn, and then move. Like, take the learnings from that and figure out what do we do. Like, maybe we'll succeed, like, but as long as you're ideating with, certain assumptions that you've validated, and it's a calculated risk, and, again, the time to feedback is short enough, whatever that means for the company or organization you're working in, I think you should definitely do, you should look to fail fast and learn from that. That's the only way you can, sort of grow, and you can develop products that can drive, value for customers.
For
Yep.
future PMs who might be interviewing for your team, you probably give away all your criteria.
That's cool. It's
If
all
they did
good.
enough research to get here to this point, I think they did a good job, I guess.
Yeah,
They're passionate
exactly.
enough.
Exactly, passionate enough. So checkbox,
Yeah.
100 points. So yeah.
We are approaching the last segment of it, Neha. So would love to know, like, in a quick summary, we do this as part of every episode. What is kind of good PM definition versus a great PM definition in your mind?
A good PM is probably that can essentially take a scope, or understand the strategic direction, probably define the scope, deliver on it. A great PM is actually goes beyond that. Like, you're not only defining the scope, pushing against the scope, delivering the set products, but then sort of going and validating, is what I set out to, like, whatever I set out to do, was that successful or not? Like, did the customer act? A lot of us, are so busy. Sometimes you just deliver stuff, move on. Like, every product manager can do that. But a great PM is the one that sort of goes back on, some of these hypotheses that they had in the beginning, validates, like, did we deliver on that or not? And that's what, to me, I think is the biggest sort of distinction, is somebody who sort of closes the loop on that and essentially ensures that you hit the mark or not. And if you didn't absolutely hit the mark, where do you sort of have gaps, and essentially how do you improve? So for me, that's the major difference between a good PM and a great PM, is essentially that follow through after the product's been released to figure out, like, what has happened with the product. Like, are people really using it? Have you met the use cases that you set out to do? And essentially, if you haven't, then where are, delta changes you can make, essentially, and then sort of learn from that and build.
Nishant, anything that you would want to ask Neha as follow-up?
No, I mean, this was great. Yeah, thanks for sharing your insight. The journey has been definitely profound. It gives us a blueprint for some of us moving from technical to product marketing to product management or otherwise, right? And yeah, it also helps to understand how leaders look at their team, and what are the cues they're looking for future potential, right? So thanks for sharing all of that.
No problem.